producers, consumers, okay, like primary consumers, secondary, tertiary consumers, then decomposers. So these decomposers, we have discussed that they are important for recycling the nutrients and minerals in the nature. So how these minerals and nutrients are recycled? So that cycles, we call them as biogeochemical cycles. Okay, so we have many different types of cycles like water, nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon, sulfur, so many more. So now we are going to discuss about water, nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon. Okay, so first, what are these cycles? Okay, so the nutrients such as water, nitrogen, and carbon are cycled through earth in cycles called biogeochemical cycles. So it is nothing but the recycling from one form to another. So here comes the law of conservation of mass. So what does this law of conservation of mass states? It says that matter cannot be created or destroyed in chemical reactions. It simply changes form. So as we have discussed yesterday, like about energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can just take different forms. But in the same way, matter also, it cannot suddenly come from any like surrounding or somewhere. So it is there in the nature. So it has to just convert from one form to another. For example, if you take a protein, so protein is degraded into amino acids, respective amino acids. Again, from those amino acids only, we will get new proteins, whether it is in our body or any other organism. So that means here we are not getting anything out of the nature, just recycling maybe within the organism or in between different organisms. And even in the same way, if we take polysaccharides, so the polysaccharides are broken down into monosaccharides in carbohydrates. Again, from these monosaccharides, again, we are getting new polysaccharides. So the synthesis, catabolism, anabolism, both are taking place. So that means the matter cannot be created or destroyed. It is just taking different forms, and no new sources of matter on earth is there. Okay, there are no new sources. It is just recycling in the form of cycles. And matter simply changes in the way that the elements are bonded together. All these elements are, they are bonded together and just converting from one form to another. That's it. So first cycle we are going to discuss is water cycle. So it is also called as hydrologic cycle. In this hydrologic cycle, here there are two sources of water. One is plants and trees, from which we are getting the water which is present in the plants and trees, that is getting evaporated in the form of transpiration. The process is called transpiration. So through transpiration, whatever the water which from trees and plants are getting evaporated, that is condensed. Then finally precipitation takes place, and again that comes back onto the earth in the form of rain. In the same way, from water bodies like oceans or seas or any small water body also, because of sun heat, because of heat maybe during summers or any other season, so this water whatever is present, that is getting evaporated. Again in same condensation, then precipitation, then again the water is coming back in the form of rain or snow or whatever it is. Whenever it comes back onto the earth from high regions like mountains or highlands, it is flowing back into the water bodies like ocean, seas. It is getting back into that. And along with this, whenever the groundwater level increases through groundwater, again the trees are taking the water back. So that means from trees and water bodies, the water is going into the nature and again it is coming back into these water bodies and trees. So that means it is a form of cycle. So therefore it is called water cycle or the hydrologic cycle. So it mainly consists of 5 processes. First is evaporation. So water in the form, usually in the form of liquid, so that is getting converted into gas. This is nothing but evaporation. Now the liquid water, which is present in oceans, lakes, or any other water bodies, it changes into water vapor or gaseous state, and it is released into the atmosphere. Okay. And in the same way, through transpiration, that means the liquid water which is present in the plants, it changes from this liquid state to gaseous state or water vapor, and it is released into the atmosphere. This is by a process, it is a part of photosynthesis. Okay, then whether it is from evaporation or transpiration, whatever the water vapor which is coming, that gas is again after condensation, whenever the temperature cools down, again this water vapor, it condenses to form liquid. Okay, so whenever it forms the liquid, it will become more denser because gas is less denser, so it can go up. But whenever it turns back into the liquid, it will become more denser and it cannot stay back in the clouds, so it has to come back. So now whenever it condenses, it will form the cloud formation and or dew, okay, in the form of dew or cloud formation. From then, it will form the precipitation. So that means whenever it cools down, this liquid, whatever it is, which is converted from gaseous state to liquid state, that again comes down onto the earth's surface in the form of water droplets. So whether it may be in the form of rain or snow or hail. Okay. And then when it falls on the higher elevation like mountains or plateaus, then because of gravity that will goes down into the lower elevation like oceans, lakes, seas, etc. And again they will be stored there until next process. So this is all about the water cycle. So because of this, the groundwater level will increase. Again, from this groundwater, the plants will take up their water, which is required. So this is about the water cycle. Then the second cycle is nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen gas. So nitrogen cycle means the recycling of nitrogen. So nitrogen gas is normally present in the atmosphere and it is adequate and abundant, but we cannot directly use the nitrogen gas. They cannot be directly utilized by the living organisms. So there must be some process which will make the atmospheric nitrogen to get available to the organisms. So here, to continue that process, there are some bacteria and lightning. So whenever we will experience lightning during heavy rainfall, so these two, bacteria and lightning, they will fix this nitrogen gas which is present in the atmosphere and they will convert them into nitrate. So this nitrates can be used by plants. These nitrates, whenever they are fixed or they are utilized by the plant, they will be stored in the plant and in the form of not exactly nitrates like amino acids or nucleic acids like that. And once they are stored, these plants are eaten up by the organisms like herbivores, primary consumers like cows, goats, etc. And this nitrogen, whatever is stored in the plants, now this is passed over to these animals. And from these animals, whenever these animals excrete here means like it can be through feces or urine or sweat or breathing, whatever it is, the some amount of nitrogen is released back into the atmosphere. So that whatever the excretion is there, that is called detritus. So we have discussed yesterday. So this detritus is again decayed by the bacteria. And finally, whenever this plant or animal dies, the decomposers comes and they will try to decompose these plants and animals, and they will just transfer this nitrogen, whatever is present in these plants and animals, back into the nature. So whatever the nitrogen which is present in the atmosphere, that is fixed up by the plants, which is utilized by the animals, and again finally it is decomposed and it is converted back into the soil. And finally, from the soil, whatever the nitrogen which is stored, that is converted back into nitrogen gas, again by some bacteria which are present in the soil. So this is nothing but we are recycling the nitrogen. So here if you can see the same thing. So from the atmosphere, removal of nitrogen, we are get ammonia or ammonium through either like bacteria or plants or fertilizers. So from that, we are getting from ammonia or ammonium, we are getting nitrites. From nitrates, we are getting nitrates. And these finally again, after maybe decomposition, we are getting back the nitrogen, which is again released into the atmosphere. Okay, this is the nitrogen cycle. So here there are a lot of bacteria which are playing important role. So the majority of Earth's atmosphere is nitrogen. So around 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. But this atmospheric nitrogen is not available directly for the use. And this form is non-reactive and it cannot be utilized by the plants. So anyway, when we say that it is not available to the organism, first that should be available to the producers like plants. From plants only, from producers only, the consumers will get whatever it is, like whatever the mineral is. Now this nitrogen availability is key and it is very important for the ecosystem. So even for production and decomposition. So in the nitrogen cycle, this nitrogen, the form of nitrogen which is unavailable, that is converted into the forms which can be utilized by the plants. So this can be through biological or physical processes. So nitrogen is available in different forms like organic nitrogen, ammonium, nitrate, nitrite, nitrous oxide, nitric oxide, inorganic nitrogen gas. So all these are different forms which are available. Organic nitrogen may be in the form of living organism or humus or intermediate products of decomposition. So in all these things, we can find organic nitrogen. And this nitrogen cycle, it transforms the nitrogen from one form to another, okay, by the action of microorganisms. So these are the steps of nitrogen cycle. So first one is nitrogen fixation. That means the atmospheric nitrogen is getting converted to ammonia or nitrate. The second is nitrification, that is from ammonia to nitrate. And third is assimilation. So whatever the ammonia nitrate formed, that must be stored in the tissues of the plants. And then ammonification. So whatever the organic nitrogen compounds which are formed, that again they get converted to ammonia. And denitrification is whenever the nitrates which are present, that has to be converted back into the nitrogen gas. So we will discuss each one. So first is nitrogen fixation. So here the atmospheric nitrogen, which is present in the atmosphere, that is taken up by the plants by various free living bacteria like Azotobacter or Clostridium, or symbiotic bacteria like Rhizobium. So they are called as diazotrophs. So what is symbiotic bacteria means? Symbiosis means it's a mutual help. So we have mutualism, symbiosis. So all these are different terms. Here nothing but two different organisms, they stay together or they live together. So there are three possibilities. One is the two organisms are living by helping each other. Second is only one organism is utilizing the help of other without harming the other organism. This is second thing. Third is this type is like parasites. They take the help of others and they will harm others. Okay. So this is parasite. So in this, now the rhizobium, it is a symbiotic. So what this rhizobium is doing, it is helping the plants. So here the symbiotic nitrogen fixing bacteria such as rhizobium, they live in the root nodules of legumes, leguminous plants. For example, you see beans, all these are like, they are called leguminous plants. So in that plant root nodules, this rhizobium bacteria is present, and they are in mutualistic relationship with the plants. So these bacteria, they produce ammonia and they will make the atmospheric nitrogen available to the plant growth, whereas it utilizes the carbohydrates from the plants. So this is mutualistic relationship. Now, about even in industries, now we can fix this nitrogen. So this is because of fertilizer industries. So in those industries, they perform Haber-Bosch process. So here 30% of the total fixed nitrogen is produced industrially, and in high temperature and pressure conditions, they convert this nitrogen gas and hydrogen into ammonia. Okay, so this process is called Haber-Bosch process. It's a chemical reaction. So here the biological nitrogen fixation can be represented by the following equation. So here what is happening? So the nitrogen, when combined with the hydrogen and electrons and as well as ATP is utilized, 16 ATP molecules, to give rise to ammonia, hydrogen, and 16 ADP molecules are released. So the energy is utilized from ATP. So the next step is nitrification. Now, the conversion of ammonia to nitrate is by soil living bacteria and other nitrifying bacteria. So whatever the nitrogen which is fixed by this rhizobium and azotobacter, all these things, they will convert the ammonia into nitrate. So first step is ammonia is oxidized by Nitrosomonas species to form nitrites. Okay, so in the first step, ammonium is formed to nitrite. And this nitrite is getting converted to nitrate by the oxidation of nitrite using nitrobacter. Okay. And it is important for the ammonia to get converted into nitrate or nitrite. So because ammonium accumulation is toxic to the plants. So ammonium is not very good for the plant. Okay, in limited amounts it is good, but when it exceeds, it will be toxic. Therefore, it has to be converted to nitrite or nitrate. So this is performed by two bacteria, Nitrosomonas species and Nitrobacter. The next is assimilation. So these plants, they take nitrogen from the soil by absorbing amino acids, nitrates, nitrite ions, ammonium ions through their roots. And they absorb nitrate or ammonia from the soil via root hair. So from the root hair, here in the image you can see, they can absorb these two, ammonium and nitrate. Then first, if nitrate is absorbed, first it has to be reduced into nitrite ions. Then these nitrite ions, then they get converted to ammonium ions. And these ammonium ions which are formed, they are directly incorporated into amino acids, nucleic acids, and chlorophylls in the plants. Okay. So here, amino acids, we all know they are the building blocks of proteins. So whatever the amino acids which are formed by this process are utilized for the production of proteins in plants. And nucleic acids, DNA, RNA, which are necessary for cell to survive. Okay, so it's a genetic blueprint. So without nucleic acids, there is no survival. So for cell growth, new cell formation, nucleic acids are important. And chlorophylls, of course, for photosynthesis process, chlorophylls are required. So for all these building blocks, they are all vital for the plant growth. Therefore, they utilize this ammonium ions to form these important things. Now in plants that have symbiotic relation with rhizobium, some nitrogen is assimilated in the form of ammonium ions directly. So not in all plants we find rhizobium. Only in leguminous plants we find rhizobium. Therefore, in that plant, ammonium can be directly utilized. This is ammonification. So when a plant or animal, so what happens here? Once the ammonium or nitrate are utilized and amino acids, nucleic acids, everything are formed. Now, these these plants are fed by the animals, primary consumers. Now, this nitrogen, whatever is fixed in the plant, that is transferred to animal. So this, whenever the plant or animal dies or animal expels the waste, okay, as I said, like through excreta or sweat or breathing. So the initial forms of nitrogen is organic. So whatever the nitrogen which is getting, it is in the organic form. Now the bacteria or fungi, they will convert this organic form back into ammonia, which is a process called ammonification or mineralization. And in this process, there are some enzymes which are participating. So they are glutamine synthetase, glutamine 2-oxoglutarate, and glutamine dehydrogenase. These are the three enzymes which are involved in this process. Then denitrification. Denitrification is nothing but reduction of nitrates back into the nitrogen gas. So now we know that, okay, some portion is getting converted to ammonia. And we have still some nitrates which are present. That nitrate has to get converted back into the nitrogen gas. So this conversion is nothing but the denitrification, and it is performed by certain bacterial species called Pseudomonas and Clostridium. This occurs mainly in anaerobic conditions, that is wherever the oxygen is completely absent. And they use this nitrate as the electron acceptor in this process. Usually, if oxygen is present, aerobic condition, oxygen acts as an electron acceptor. But when oxygen is absent, nitrate acts as an electron acceptor. Okay. By utilizing this, they will convert this nitrate into nitrogen gas back. This process is called denitrification, and it occurs in waterlogged soils. In soils where we have more water, in that areas, usually we see this kind of denitrification. So the sequence of reactions are nitrate gets converted to nitrite, then to nitric oxide, then nitrous oxide, and finally that is getting converted to nitrogen gas. So this is the nitrogen cycle, where you can see the atmospheric nitrogen, either it is fixed by the bacteria like Rhizobium bacteria in the leguminous plant roots, or it is fixed in the bacteria which is present in the soil. Then it is converted to ammonia, and this ammonia by nitrifying bacteria, they are getting converted to nitrate, which is accumulated in the plants, or it is again converted back to nitrogen by denitrifying bacteria. And those plants which are accumulating these nitrates, they are accumulating in the form of amino acids, proteins, nucleic acids, and chlorophylls in the plants. And from plants, they are getting transferred to animals. And whenever this plant or animal dies, or it excretes the detritus, so these detritivores, they will convert them back into the ammonium. Okay, so this is the overall nitrogen cycle. So what is the importance? Every cycle has some importance. So what is the importance of this function of this cycle? It is because the nitrogen is very much necessary for all the organisms, because it is a basic element of nucleic acid itself. So without which there is no survival. So all amino acids, proteins, nucleic acids, they are made up of nitrogen. And this chemical processing or natural fixation is necessary to convert the gaseous nitrogen into the compounds like nitrate or ammonia, which can be utilized by the plants, then in turn can be utilized by the animals. And now this nitrogen can be used in the industry also, in like fertilizers, in the form of fertilizers, nitric acid, nylon, dyes, explosives, and it is utilized in the pharmacological drugs as medicines. Then nitrous oxide can be used as anesthesia. And even in computers, we see this nitrogen gas used in central processing unit, which will, this nitrogen gas will keep keep the CPUs. They'll protect the CPUs from heating up, and they are used in X-ray detectors and also cryopreservation, where the liquid nitrogen is utilized to store the biological samples, especially blood or cells, specimens like tissues, for longer period of time. We can store them for 70, 80 years. And also this helps to control the pollution by destroying various toxic liquids and vapors in the industries. So these are all the uses of nitrogen. The next cycle is phosphorus cycle. The phosphorus cycle is slowest biogeochemical cycle, because the phosphorus has to come, it has to move from lithosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere. So the atmospheric dose doesn't play an important role in the movement of this phosphorus, because phosphorus are usually solid. They are not usually present in the form of gas. Okay. Only low, if the concentration of phosphorus is low in soils, they will reduce the plant growth. And even the microorganisms which are present in the soil, like rhizobium or any other important microorganisms, their growth will be reduced. Therefore, phosphorus is required, but it is not available in the form of abundant gas in the atmosphere. But it can be found only in the form of phosphine gas, that too in highly reducing conditions only we can see this. So what is the process of phosphorus cycle? So initially the phosphate, it weathers from the rocks and minerals in the form of apatite. So it's a mineral. So in the form of apatite mineral, we can find this phosphate. So due to this terrestrial leaching erosion through the action of rain, that means this phosphate is present in the form of rocks, okay, and minerals. So due to the rain, there will be a process which is taking place, which is called leaching erosion, and whatever the phosphorus which is present, that is released in the soluble form. This soluble form is taken up by the plant and it is converted to organic compounds, and now they are stored in the plants. From these plants, this phosphorus is consumed by the herbivores, and it is incorporated in their tissues or excreted. And after this, whenever the plant or animal dies, again it is decomposed and it will go back into the soil, and mostly they will be again converted to rocks, and some portion may go back into the ocean. Okay, so this is the phosphorus cycle. So the steps in the phosphorus cycle are: phosphate is released by the erosion of rocks. Whenever the rocks erupt, okay, from that we will get this phosphate, and the plants and fungi, they taken up this phosphate with their roots, and this phosphate which is phosphorus, which is consumed by the plants or fungi, they are producers. From that to primary consumers, then to secondary, then to tertiary consumers, and then so like that through food chain, it is transferred from one organism to another, and then from that to it enters into the groundwater from the soil, and after some time again it forms the rock, and again when this rock erodes, the cycle, it starts again. So this is how the cycling happens. So the same thing in the diagrammatic manner, we can see this. Okay. So what is the function of the phosphorus? So it's an important nutrient for plants and animals, and also it is a limiting nutrient for aquatic organisms. It's very important. However, it does not enter the atmosphere, but they present on the land and the form of soil mineral or in rocks. So 80% of the mined phosphorus are utilized for synthesizing, for converting them into fertilizers. And phosphorus from fertilizers and sewage, they enter into the water bodies and they will pollute the water bodies. And this phosphorus, which normally occurs in the nature, is in the form of phosphate ion, and most abundant form of phosphate which is present is orthophosphate. So even in the fertilizers, we see orthophosphorus based fertilizers mostly. Next is carbon cycle. So in the carbon cycle, so from sunlight through photosynthesis, whatever the excuse me, whatever the carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere, along with that, by utilizing the light energy, the plants and trees, they will synthesize carbohydrates by photosynthesis process. And this carbon is from plants, it is utilized by these consumers, and through respiration, either plant respiration or animal respiration, or through decomposition of plants and animals, this carbon dioxide goes back into the atmosphere. And also through emissions from the factories, the carbon dioxide goes back into the atmosphere. Now, so the carbon is found in the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is used by the plants during photosynthesis to make food, and they will give off the oxygen. Yeah, so they will utilize the carbon dioxide and they will release the oxygen back into the atmosphere. Now these animals eat food, that is plants, for their energy. And in this form, the carbon is now consumed by the animals. And during cellular respiration, either in plants or animals, so this oxygen is taken off and carbon dioxide is released. Therefore, through this respiration, the carbon dioxide goes back into the atmosphere. But not all carbon dioxide which is utilized by the organism goes back into the atmosphere. Some portion is trapped in the animals and plants. And when they are dead, these decomposers will try to degrade or decay them, and the carbon dioxide may be released, or through fossil fuels form. Okay, fossil fuels means we all know fossils are nothing but whenever these animals or human beings or plants, any dead matter, when it is pressed continuously for thousands of years due to the pressure, so the carbon which is present will come out and they will form some fuels like coal, oils like petrol, and they are utilized as a fuels. So they will be converted to fossil fuels. So in this form also the carbon is released back into the atmosphere. And also whenever we burn the plant material or fossil fuels, now we are burning coal and petrol. So whenever we burn them, so they emit carbon dioxide, carbon as a carbon dioxide, which will directly enter into the atmosphere. So in all these forms, the carbon which is present in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide, that is again returned back into the atmosphere. Now here you can see the overall cycle. So the carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere, through photosynthesis, they are trapped into the plant in the form of carbohydrate. And from there, it is transferred to consumers, primary consumers, then secondary consumers, then tertiary consumers. Then through their waste material detritus or respiration, again that goes back into the atmosphere or metabolic breakdown. And at the same time, in industries, because of burning of fossil fuels or wood, carbon dioxide is returned back to the atmosphere. This is the carbon cycle. So what are the effects? Here, naturally occurring gases in the Earth's atmosphere, they trap heat. So whatever the gases which are present, they will trap heat and they will control the temperature on the Earth. They will control the temperature so that it doesn't rise above 60 degrees. But now what is happening? Because we are burning fossil fuels at a very faster rate. It took some thousands of years, hundreds and thousands of years to form a fossil fuel. But within some hundreds of years, we are just burning them, right? Because of so many vehicles, we are simply burning the petrol and coal also. So what happens? And also deforestation. Yesterday also we have discussed when we are discussing about forest ecosystem. So we are cutting the trees. So where this carbon dioxide will be trapped, it cannot be trapped. So everything goes back into the atmosphere. And because of this, the carbon dioxide levels are getting increased at a higher rate. Even the methane and water vapor. So they are called greenhouse gases. So this is resulting in greenhouse effect or global warming. Finally, the temperature cannot be regulated the temperature is rising beyond certain level, especially in the foreign countries where it will be very cool usually. Nowadays we can see in news like we are getting record temperatures, high temperatures in all these regions. So finally, because of that, icebergs will melt, so which will raise the water level. So somewhere it is like indirectly or indirectly, it is disturbing the entire nature. Okay. So here, whenever the radiation comes from the sun, it is absorbed by the earth to keep it warm. But some energy is radiated back into the space. Okay. And here we have ozone layer, which will control the some of the UV rays, which most of the UV rays are absorbed by the ozone layer. Okay. So ozone layer is a naturally occurring layer in the stratosphere. It absorbs large amounts of ultraviolet rays. And this ozone layers, this is protecting us, protecting the earth from ultraviolet radiation effects. But because of chlorofluorocarbons, so which are the chemicals which are released from ACs and refrigerators, they are going and they are reacting with the ozone molecules. So because of this, reduction of ozone is taking place and it is forming some holes in near polar regions. Okay. And because of this increased ultraviolet radiation, because of these holes in the ozone, ultraviolet radiation cannot be absorbed by the ozone and they are directly hitting the earth's surface. Therefore, the ultraviolet radiations they are directly, we are exposed directly to the ultraviolet rays. So we all know this ultraviolet rays can cause DNA mutations. So they can affect the skin very badly, and even the body in the cell, they can cause some very damage reactions, like they can form thymine dimers in DNA and they can damage the DNA. Finally, it is causing cancers. Okay. So skin cancers in most of the countries, like where there used to be very cold conditions, now they have become very hot and it is really resulting in some diseases like cancers. So this is the ozone layer depletion, which is caused by this increased amount of carbons. Okay. So this is all about the biogeochemical cycles. So we have discussed today about water, nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon cycles. So the other topics we will discuss in the next classes. So if you have any doubts, you can just ask. Yes.
Ma'am, we have made a group, ma'am. Can we add you, ma'am? If you give your number.
Sure. Yeah.
If you have some doubts or some important questions during the examination, can we contact you, ma'am?
Okay, I will give you my number in chat box.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, I have given. You can add me.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Any doubts in the class?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, then we will continue in the next class, other topics. Okay.